Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Apple, a Percy Jackson Relong podcast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we read Chapter 16 of The Last Olympian. We get help from a thief. I'd say help very, very loosely, because I guess they get melted. So yeah, I guess it's some help.
Wait a second. So who's the thief in this regard? Is that Clarice?
No, it's Selena.
It's Selena. Okay, that's what I thought.
She pulled a Mulan.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit of a Mulan move right there.
Let's get down to business and get our face melted off.
This is kind of a real bummer of a chapter where it's like, why would Selena do that? Also, why is Clarice still such a stubborn jerk? I don't know. I'm just a little annoyed at both of them.
Well, there's a lot of stubbornness in this chapter. You know, you have Clarice and all of them, and then you have Rachel and Annabeth's stubbornness.
That's true. Kind of goes both ways there with Rachel and Annabeth. And I guess that's it. Still, that's enough, though. I mean, in some ways, Selena is being stubborn, too. There's just a lot of bad decisions, and we get to see Rachel warn us of these bad decisions, and then it doesn't matter because she doesn't know what that means, basically. So that's fun.
There's a lot of mystery upon mystery in this chapter. When I was reading it, it's 90% mystery and then 10% fight scene.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know. I didn't really care about the fight scene, as we've discussed many a time on the show, but then I remembered earlier what they had said about the Child of Ares thing, and I was like, oh no, what's going to happen with that? I guess Clarice is going to appear, and then I had sort of already forgotten the thing Rachel had said about a trick causing a death, which I don't know, that could have been anything. She could have meant something happening much later in the book or something. I didn't know how imminent that was.
Yeah, it's very imminent. The second that she walks off onto the lawn and she almost dies in a helicopter crash, she's already spouting all this exposition to Percy about futurisms.
Yeah, she just kind of appears as so I know what's happening, but not really, which I guess is sort of the main frustration of these books in some ways, is that there is sort of this power to see what's happening, but it's these glimpses that are confusing and sort of poetic and metaphorical. You never know exactly what they mean until it happens. So it's what's the point in knowing the future if you kind of can only confirm what the prophecy or whatever prediction was until after it's already happened. Oh, right, that's the thing that thing must have meant. But it doesn't really serve any purpose, any benefit.
There are 3 different types of literary devices that Rick Riordan just loves to do. The first one being interrupting, the second being dreams, and the fourth, I'm skipping the third already, is because I have to interrupt this for dramatic tension. The fourth is actually the idea of prophecies and how you know them when it's too late. I guess
that dramatic irony. I guess
it's a little bit like dramatic irony, but if you also notice, I think he actually kind of plays fun at this with the chapter titles a little bit, where how we kind of know something's about to happen until it's too late, and oh, that's the name of the chapter. That's what he was referring to.
That's true. He does do that.
There's nothing bad about that. His literary devices, especially for a YA book series, that's fine by me. It's there's so many different things that you can do, but why go against the grain? Because this works fine by me, especially with the dream sequences, and we haven't gotten a lot of interruption lately. We haven't gotten interruptus, so I've been quite happy.
That's true. Well, I guess it would just take too long to get this over with if there was a lot of interrupting. I feel like so much of the earlier books hinged on interrupting because then the book would be like a pamphlet. If we didn't have other things going on and kind of interrupting and derailing these important discussions and these important plot points, then everything would be so linear that it would happen in 3 chapters or something. That's kind of the vibe I got from the earlier books. But now there's just so much already going on that it's even if you do discuss everything, you're well, this still sucks though. There's still this imminent danger coming from over here, and then there's this internal struggle. There's a lot going on.
Well, there's still plenty of mystery. We still don't know who the spy is. We don't know a lot of things. We don't know what Ethan's role is going to be playing. We don't know if Hades is going to join into the fight. You don't know if the gods are going to be destroyed. And also, the new thing we have is Percy Jackson might not be the hero that has been prophesized.
Yeah, that's true. That's something that Rachel just sort of drops on him. By the way, I looked up dramatic irony, and this chapter isn't really an example of dramatic irony, strictly speaking, only because we also, as the audience, don't really know the meaning of what's about to happen until it happens. The strict definition of like a literary dramatic irony would be literary technique originally used in Greek tragedy by which the full significance of a character's words or actions are clear to the audience or reader, although unknown to the character.
I'm trying to think of like a really good example of dramatic irony. I guess the best example would be the one you do in Series of Unfortunate Events with Uncle Monty dying because of his poisonous snakes. And he keeps alluding, oh, these snakes won't hurt you at all.
That's more foreshadowing, I would say. Dramatic irony would be more like if you know someone is actually talking about a death you know is going to happen to them, but like they don't know it. So that has definitely happened in Percy Jackson, but it isn't quite the same with the prophecies because we are also sort of in the dark about this, where we're not included on like the full significance of these like esoteric predictions until really they happen. Or, I mean, you can make your best guess. That's kind of what we do on the show, but there isn't like, oh, well, the audience knows what this means. You know what I mean? Like, we don't actually. We're just kind of guessing along with the main characters.
Well, preface to that as well is like one thing with like dramatic irony, especially in Greek tragedies, is you have the chorus, which kind of do very much like, I always forget the name of the Shakespearean device where you have a character that comes out and turns towards the audience and tells them what's actually happening, and then cuts right back into the scene. Like, you have, like, that tongue-in-cheek performance, whereas, like, the chorus does that a lot, and we see kind of it here, I guess,
like breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. We don't quite have that.
We don't have that. Like, we don't have, like, a character or a god that can foresee the future and just be like, well, this is gonna happen. Aren't you guys gonna have a lot of fun when Percy dies?
Yeah, we're kind of, like, mixing a few different literary devices here. Like, they all sort of serve similar purposes or like function in like the realm of like predicting something that's going to happen later in a story. With foreshadowing, it's more like it alludes to something and then it happens. You could sort of call some of the prophecy stuff foreshadowing, where it like hints that something's going to happen, but you're not exactly sure what that means.
Well, that's entirely foreshadowing, or at least it's like giving the audience, especially with YA kids, pretty much like something to look forward to while you're reading through the book. Like, you're trying to figure out the mystery of the prophecy while you're reading the book. And when it happens, you're like, oh my God, it's like, here it is in the book.
Yeah, that definitely happens a lot here. What's interesting about this particular chapter is how quickly we sort of cash in all of that, like, sort of speak about the future and what's going to happen with Rachel coming in and being like, here's all this stuff that I think is going to happen, but I can't really elaborate. And then immediately one of the things that she predicts happens.
Yes. And I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is this weird thing with Rachel. So this chapter kind of opens up, and guess what? Rachel's going down. She's going timber. She's crashing because her pilots fell. Oh no, B, are you? I'm so sorry.
So that makes sense that she's not flying the helicopter. I don't know for a split second.
B, she is flying. She's crashing in style.
Yeah. So I guess I sort of feel a little bit bad about whatever guy she got to fly this helicopter for her, because wow, he didn't sign up for this at all. That's kind of messed up in a way. It's like, here's like this rich girl who's like, all right, buddy, let's fly into a war zone. Like, he didn't sign up for that.
Well, here's the thing, though. He didn't know. She didn't know. You don't just get into a helicopter.
She knew some bad stuff was on the horizon. That's kind of her whole character.
But she didn't know what the effects are going to happen, kind of like people falling asleep. She just knew that people weren't calling her dad, like something bad was happening. It's just one of those things where, like, normally what the curse does is it's supposed to redirect people. Like we talked about this last time, how disastrous this would all be with like planes falling out of the sky, trains getting derailed, puppies peeing in places they shouldn't be peeing in, you know, cats and dogs living in harmony, mass
this is
hysteria.
Kind of an interesting scenario because as we left off on the last chapter, Annabeth kind of rushes to the help of Rachel in this weird, complicated, passive-aggressive way.
So when I'm thinking about this is a great visual set piece. This would be like the really good beginning of your episode, of your show, if you did a live-action adaptation, because it's so filled with suspense. It's like getting to the helicopter, and then Annabeth gets into it, and then obviously, you know, the Pegasus gets hurt, so Percy has to land, then you see the helicopter almost like crash, but she saves it at the last minute, which is, to me, is really good, fun action storytelling. And I love her reactions like, I don't know how to fly a helicopter, but my dad knows how to fly stuff, so I just guessed.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough established about Annabeth's character that I'm not super surprised that she could figure out how to fly a helicopter. First of all, she's pretty like engineering minded. She, after all, has been going through Daedalus's like secret files and has learned a lot in that. And also her dad has taught her about, I don't know, like whatever, like World War II airplanes and things like that. So it's sort of has already been established that might be something she could figure out, and it makes enough sense. Like, it isn't just totally like out of nowhere, like, oh, why does she know how to fly a helicopter? Like, yeah, I kind of believe that she'd be able to figure it out.
But B, didn't you know that the Wright brothers were sons of Athena? So that's why she kind of knew by proxy of DNA, because we have that in Sea of Monsters where Percy knows how to sail. He knows how to sail a pirate ship, but he doesn't know how to necessarily do it. He does it by instinct. So maybe that might be a thing.
I don't know. Like, I don't exactly know how it works as far as like children of certain gods having just innate abilities. Like we've discussed, like Percy has certain innate abilities of like watercraft and being in the water, and that, but then at the same time we have Talia, who's ironically afraid of heights, and then she's like freaking out when she's piloting
flying the
like
bus?
the sun, yeah, for Apollo, and he kind of is like making fun of her a little bit for it. But it's like, so is that always the case? I don't know. I don't think that that's really even the rationale that they give for why Annabeth is good, or at least passable at flying a helicopter. She even says like, oh, I had looked through Daedalus's like notes, and he talked a lot about flying machines, and also my dad was obsessed with like airplanes and things growing up. So I think that's like enough to explain it.
So when it comes to the case of like Thalia, what I'm looking at here is that just more of like a character flaw. That's something that she has to, overcome, or that's just like a thing for her. It's like, how ironic is it that a daughter of Zeus is allergic to heights? Like, that seems like something that seems like, it shouldn't be. I think that's more of a character trait. Whereas
it's not a foregone
no, but I
conclusion.
guarantee you if like for some reason Thalia was up in like a 747 and it was going down, I guarantee you, because she's the daughter of the big three, suddenly she'd know how to fly it correctly because that's Zeus's domain, much as like Percy can sail a ship. Like, I feel like that's something they could possibly explore. What does Nico do? Is he really good at like burials and like embalming?
Wait, that Nico would just be really good at yeah, I'm trying to think.
Mortuary science? Yeah, he'd be great at it. No, maybe he'd be really good at, like, mining equipment.
If we're following the logic of, like, sky, water, land, you know what I mean, then I guess, is he just really good at digging holes?
Yeah.
Is he really good at, like, piloting one of those, like, burrower things that, like, the mole man in Atlantis had?
Exactly. That's what he does. Or you know what? He's really, really good at driving, like, he makes like Vin Diesel really jealous that he knows how to Tokyo drift.
Oh, because it's a land vehicle, I guess. We're kind of extrapolating. I don't know if there's a fully fleshed out logic for how.
There probably isn't. It's whatever like Rick Riordan needs for his characters to do. But pretty much Annabeth saves Rachel, and guess what? Instead of being like, "Oh, thank you so much," Annabeth kind of is already mad and just walks away because she's just angry because, Rachel came during the war just to find Percy. Like, oh my God, can't they just be, I don't know, friends? Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, regardless, it's pretty great that Annabeth jumps to the rescue, that it's sort of like this weird, it's such an Annabeth move, honestly, where she's like, I'm going to help you, but then I'm going to be moody about it.
Yeah, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in the sense of like, every way that you look at it, like, yeah, but she's also kind of important. But I guess, like, in the construct of, like, Annabeth's perspective, it's like, well, she came because of Percy and Percy only. Like, maybe she wanted to go home, but it was really just for Percy. Like, oh, God, Annabeth, please stop. You're supposed to be super wise. Maybe from all the blood loss. She has bloodlust.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Yeah, this is, I just don't love this, like, entire love triangle construct where it just seems like very silly that they act this way. Like, what, Annabeth is offended that she's come to help, like, and then even like Percy's kind of a jerk about it too, where she shows up or Rachel shows up and says, oh, I always ruin things, and then he says something in like the narration about how he couldn't argue with her there. It's like, yes, her her helicopter almost crashed. She didn't really know that would happen, but she did know that something bad and foreboding was on the horizon, that she had to warn her friend. So it's like, even if they didn't have like the weird romantic tension going on in the narrative, it doesn't really matter. Like, wouldn't you do that for a friend? I don't know. I just think that everyone's being a little hard on Rachel.
We also have to remember, these people are still teenagers, and like there's some type of irrational behavior when it comes to some of this stuff. Like, did I ever tell you the story of my friend who, I think I've said this on air, where he would try to get girls, and when he did, he would ask them specifically to call him Batman, and they would. And it's the most craziest
Yeah, you did
thing
say that.
I've ever seen in my life. Like, some people are like
really
so irrational when it comes to stuff like that.
That's bad.
What'd you say?
I said that's bad. It wasn't really a important observation.
No, it's not really an important observation, but people do irrational things, especially in like wartime and especially during dangerous times. But I don't know. I feel like when I see all this stuff, I just kind of like, it just kind of just derails the book a little bit, where you're like, okay, Percy has to explain all this stuff. Rachel and Annabeth kind of have to fight and butt heads. And then the story just goes back to its like moseying speed. Like, okay, so we're going back to like things such as Rachel is going to talk to Chiron, and Chiron's going to talk to Rachel, and they're going to talk about all the spooky visions and future predictions that she has, which for me is fascinating.
Yeah, Chiron's actually the only one who's nice to Rachel. He like really welcomes her with open arms, and even Percy seems to be weirdly jealous of that he's like giving her attention. Then he's like, all right, well, Percy, you need to go sleep. You look like garbage, which he looks down and realizes that that's true.
And also, Rachel wanted Percy to go on their vacation because she's having all these things, and she just wanted Percy to help figure out why she's having all these weird dreams and predictions and drawing
Yeah,
things.
there's a lot going on. I'm really glad that at least she gets to talk to Chiron, because if anybody could help, I feel like he might. He's had some sort of perspective on this. And then, oh God, Percy's like concern for Rachel is really heartbreaking here, because when he sort of sends Rachel off with Chiron, he hold on, I have to like find the line. He really wants to make sure that she's okay, and hopefully Chiron is like gonna rein her in or keep her in check somehow. I need to find the actual thing that he says. Chiron, I blurted. I had a sudden terrible image of Camp Half-Blood in the 90s and May Castellan's scream coming from the attic. You'll help Rachel, right? I mean, you'll warn her that she's got to be careful with the stuff, not go too far. His tail flickered, like it does when he's anxious. Yes, Percy, I will do my best to understand what is happening and advise Miss Dare, but this may take some time. Meanwhile, you should rest. So, that like was so heartbreaking. The way that it was like phrased, like Chiron, I blurted, like the way that
it's a friend
he's obviously
actually having
stewing
like
and all these
concern.
anxieties.
Like,
well, you have to put it in the perspective, too, of, like, Percy, this whole book has been having these horrible visions of May, and he also visited her in person. Like, he knows what can happen, and he understands, like, this horrible backstory of why she has to live the way she lives now, and he's seeing similar things happening to Rachel all of a sudden, who is someone he obviously cares about, if not loves. And it's just so sad that, like, he has to deal with all this stuff on top of, like, every other ridiculous prophecy-related thing.
yeah, and I think that's a really powerful message within this book, is kind of like, how can you help your friends when, like, you know, you can't pick up, like, a sword and, like, fight it off the person?
Right.
And that's kind of something that happens a lot in this book series, as well as with this particular book, is like, how do you help someone that, you know, sometimes can't necessarily get help, or how do they get help? Because it's sometimes, you know, I don't want to say like some type of like the secret stuff. It's not a physical enemy. You can't defeat it that way. I'm not going to say it's like it's the power within you, because sometimes that isn't the case whatsoever. Like, you can't just.
Sometimes bad things happen to good people too. Like, sometimes it's not preventable or whatever else. I mean, especially in this story, there's a lot of examples of people having like cruelly
good intentions backfire.
Yeah, or whatever, just having cruel things happen to them through the fates or whatever. They get killed in some horrible traumatic way, or they think they're doing a good thing but it's actually a bad thing. It's like that's kind of the whole crux of Greek tragedy in some ways, you know?
Isn't that what happens at the end of this chapter with Selena? She puts on all of Clarissa's armor.
Right, exactly. It's totally like your intentions could be completely in the right place, but everything has aligned to cause something horrible to happen.
Everything's almost realistic. Like, you're not going to have the storybook ending where you survive and all your friends go get ice cream and calzones.
Yeah, as great as that would be.
Oh, that sounds so
yeah,
good.
it's so sad. This really is a very difficult chapter to deal with. I keep saying that, but this book is just like so much more of a downer.
Well, I think that's what makes it much more fascinating of a book, where you can sit down and like really dissect all the stuff, rather than Percy going on a road trip for the umpteenth time, and you have characters that are stuck in one place. Well, I mean, they do travel around a little bit, but for the most part, they're stuck in one fixed place, New York City, and all you really have is fight scenes and just raw dialogue of people just trying to survive.
I mean, basically, this chapter follows the structure that we've gotten pretty used to in this book, which is there's a little bit of like a dramatic interpersonal conversation with the characters. There's a big fight scene with like a giant monster that they probably won't be able to kill for some sort of esoteric ancient Greek reason, and there's also like this looming prophecy of other terrible stuff happening that you keep seeing in like visions and dreams. So it's like there's really no escape. It's like you go to sleep, there's horrible visions. You wake up, you're either like nursing your wounds from a horrible battle, or you're having a horrible battle. Those are really the only
God, this
options.
sounds like finals week in high school.
Yeah, a little bit. It's sort of like there's just like no respite at all, because even like when the characters sleep, there's just yet more plot.
Well, yeah, because when you fall asleep, you're just like, well, my body's still in the same place. I could go to like La La Land and have a lot of mystical journeys and wake up and be back in war zone time.
I feel so incredibly bad for the characters, because there's like just no let up of the tension. Even like some of like the slightly funny things they'll mention, whatever, the party ponies, is just such a minor distraction from all this bad stuff that's happening.
Yes, and I think when it comes to this, much like Deathly Hallows, like that book is not whimsical whatsoever. Like people get
all
melted.
The whimsy out the window. It's just death.
See, that's what I like. For me, I like the beginnings of books. Like I love books like, you know, like Harry Potter. I like A New Hope. I like stories where it's like very whimsical, but also, you know, it's hopeful.
Like the beginning. Yeah, I under, or even, you know, Lord of the Rings, that there's always like sort of cozy, more whimsical introduction that like takes you on the journey through this world and be like, wow, look at all this magic. And then like by the end, it's like, well, all this magic has wrought this terrible war that has killed the people you love. Like it always ends there.
Yeah, like for me, the Fellowship of the Ring is probably my favorite of all the trilogy for Lord of the Rings, because it's like it's so hopeful, but also there's some danger to it. And even with Percy Jackson, it's very much the same way. It's like the beginnings of things, but also it's like, oh boy, I'm a hero, I get to do all these things. And then you get to this one, you're war torn.
Yeah, you're so caught up in like the
whimsy,
in the not just the whimsy, but just sort of like the sense of adventure, and everything's new and you're being introduced to things. And then like by the end of the series, it's like, oh yeah, there's also a lot of like scary implications that come with these abilities, and horrible things happen as a result.
But you know what my favorite scene of all of Star Wars is? The Return of the Jedi, where Luke and Vader are fighting pretty much in the Emperor's throne room, and pretty much Vader's like taunting Luke, and pretty much like he strikes the chord like, maybe your sister will join, and he starts freaking out. He starts swinging for the fences. And, like, you get from, like, happy-go-lucky Luke is like, I'm going to turn my dad to good to, I'm going to murder you. And that's, like, you go from, like, the happy-go-whimsy to pretty much straight-up murder until it gets to, like, he chops off his dad's arm and realizes that he's as much as a machine as Luke is with his hand. He will become his father if he strikes him down.
I'm just sort of waiting for, I guess, that scene, right? Because that's sort of the trajectory we're on right now, where we've gone from, like, just the nice, gentle days of the early books, which, I mean, you don't realize that at first in a way, because you're just like so new to it. You're with Percy and you're like, oh, monsters, this is way more like adventure than I'm ever used to in my day-to-day life. So it seems like a lot, but then in retrospect, it like seems almost quaint in comparison to like this really heavy prophecy that you have to contend with, which, I mean, I guess we should discuss that the prophecy may or may not have much to do with Percy at all. Maybe?
Yeah, actually, it possibly could be that, because Rachel drops this huge truth bomb that Percy Jackson might not be the hero.
That's like all she says, of course, because she's just like her. We could talk about her predictions, but they're very vague.
But also, if you look at the Great Prophecy, he's only supposed to make a choice.
Yeah,
Never
make
said
a
anything
choice.
about him being a hero.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that he will make the choice that will, help the gods or kill the gods. He's just going to be making a choice.
Mentioned in the prophecy, and then the same thing with Nico. And then there's like this sort of like existential question that you need to ask where it's like, are prophecies always the same person, or do you just need to like fulfill the requisite bullet points that the prophecy mentions? Like, oh, as long as you were a child of the big three and you hit 16, does it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I always wonder like what that means.
I think prophecies are much like probability. Like, you flip a coin, chances are you're either going to get heads or tails. But you can always have like 10 tricks to like figure out how to flip that coin to always get the same probability. At the end, it's still going to be the same number, whatever you do. When it comes to like prophecies, a good example of this is actually Oedipus, because you have this prophecy that their parents get where it's pretty much, the son will kill the father and marry the mother.
He fulfills his own prophecy.
He fulfills his own prophecy because his parents saw the parameters and decided, we're going to do the exact opposite rather than just leaving it as is and solving it when it actually happens.
And that's what ends up causing it in the first place. Yeah, it's really complicated. So I guess, I don't know, it seems to me that Greek mythology believes in a sort of fate, like everything always will happen the way that is projected to happen. So is it like pointless that they're trying to like prevent certain things from happening, or is there like some wiggle room with what prophecies mean? Is there a way to prevent certain bad things from happening, or is there only a way to prevent the specifics? Like, oh, ultimately someone, it doesn't matter which, there'll be someone from the big three and they will eventually reach 16, they will make a choice and it will determine I guess it's not set in stone that the choice will be good or bad, I guess, is the only slight wiggle room there.
So what I will say about this, I'm about to drop some Terminator knowledge here and how much this is the only way I could possibly understand it is just through Terminator logic of in Terminator 2, their plan is to destroy the parts of the Terminator from the first movie so that they don't build all the robots and the robots take over. And they're successful, right? They destroy all the parts, and then Arnie, dips himself in the liquid, and I start crying when he gives the thumbs up. Oh, God, sorry, I'm crying. The whole message of Terminator 2B is, fate is what you make of it. Fate isn't written in stone. And then Terminator 3 happens, and it's like, oh, yeah, that fate stuff, it's inevitable.
It happens anyway.
That's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like such a slap in the face. It's like there's two ways.
It's a very existential question, I guess. It's like what you believe fate means or something.
Well, I think when it comes to like the idea of fate, it's what you believe in. Like you can make your own luck in the sense of, if you do all the things right, even if you did everything right and followed the prophecy, it might not be the right parameters. It's like you can believe in like just like tying your shoes. Every day your shoes are going to be tied. You look down the one day and all of a sudden your shoelace is untied. Does your brain melt? Or do you just retie it and move on with your life?
Yeah, I'm never exactly sure like what the book believes about prophecies, like how much is inevitable and how much is preventable, because I feel like so many examples are they try to prevent stuff and that actually, like with your example with Oedipus, where it's like you're going to make that happen anyway.
A good example of this is actually with Bianca, where we have the prophecy, you will fall in the land with no rain. I just can't remember what it is right now. But, it falls in the parameters. She does everything and dies. But then you have, like, the thing where it's like Percy's trying to solve something, like save his mom, even though it says you'll lose what matter most in the end. But that turns out to be not true. It's like a fallacy where he loses what he cares most about in the end, but still gets it back. Right, it's like this
weird double speak. Yeah, he doesn't lose what matters most in the end. Like, that's...
Well, at the moment of the prophecy, he thinks he does. And then he gets it back because he completes his quest. And then at the end, he gets betrayed by a friend, quote unquote.
Oh, but it's you fail to save, which is like the weird double speak of like that she saves herself or something. We could talk forever about like the specific reason why that prophecy didn't mean what they thought it meant.
But then again, that's still fate, isn't it? He still failed what mattered most.
It still happened the way it said. It just happened in a way they didn't assume, which I guess that's like why prophecies are written in these like esoteric ways. And even like Apollo kind of jokes that like even he doesn't know what they mean because like he is this god of poetry. And there's something just really funny about the fact that he like knows that they're like these vague poetic statements that could mean many things, and even he can't like decipher them because they're just so like metaphorical, or they use like a twist of language to mean something other than what you might immediately assume they mean.
Well, I think a good example of this is the idea of the murder mystery and how you have two timelines, really, where you have the night of the murder and then you have the day afterwards when they find the body and the investigation happens. It's very much the same thing of like the murder will always be there, but it takes the detective to try to figure out how to uncover all the clues, even if they were destroyed. How does a detective figure it out? It's very much the same thing here. It's like you're looking at this through two timelines. You're looking at the one that will probably happen, and then you're looking at it based off of the current timeline that's actually happening with Percy. Like, well, if I did this and this and this, well, if you did this, maybe it might happen, maybe it might not. Or is it fate is what you make of it, and you can do whatever you want? Though I'm going to say that fate is kind of written in a way where there's fixed points in time, much like Doctor Who, and then there's wibbly wobbly timey-wimey bits.
I think that's probably the perspective that this series is coming from, where there are certain things that are immutable that can't be changed. They're like just sort of forever like echoes of time, where even like there's examples where some sort of myth played out in a specific way, and then that monster or whatever comes back, and then a hero is sort of destined to like play out the same beats in a way. So that
isn't that what happened with Luke with getting the apples? That's pretty much he's doing the repeat.
Right, exactly. The example of Luke with the apple, where it's like there's these sort of stories that repeat themselves over and over again, like this endless loop of, monsters dying, monsters coming back, heroes defeating them in similar ways, or heroes being harmed in similar ways. But within that, there's like some change, there's some wiggle room. There isn't quite exactly like everything isn't like bullet pointed, like step by step it happens the exact same way, but there's like a general outline of what's going to happen.
Yes, I think there's a general outline and a general outcome, because as we see with like the dream sequences in this chapter, Nico's trying to ask his dad to help fight for the gods, even though he's like, I don't wanna, because they're mean to me.
Yeah, I just roll my eyes at Hades, honestly. He's just, like, pretty immature. I feel a little bit the same way about Clarice, to be honest. I think, like, in a lot of ways, there are some pretty stubborn characters. I think we forgot to mention Hades earlier in this episode where we talked about how there's a lot of stubborn people. Yeah, Hades is stubborn. Clarice is stubborn.
Oh, Hades is the worst. He's like, I'd like to speak to your manager because of my expired coupons and I will fight you.
Yeah, Annabeth is stubborn. It's bad. People need to just,
Everyone needs to take a chill pill.
Yeah, well, they need to, like, get over themselves, basically.
Well, you know how this would work? Group therapy, everybody. Just hug it out. That's how it works, right? That's what my therapist tells me to do.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about Hades. We'll also get later to Clarice and how annoyed I am at her. But
so what are your thoughts about Hades? Because obviously Percy Jackson goes to sleep. And he has terrible dreams again because, surprise, surprise, this guy doesn't take melatonin.
I find it a little annoying that we have to have this conversation with Hades. He seems pretty petulant and ridiculous, which I guess is sort of par for the course for a lot of the gods. I don't know if it's just because they've been around for so long. They're just like, they can be very self-serving and they don't really look at the big picture a lot of the time. Though I do enjoy this scene because it's a chance for some redemption with Nico, where he has made some questionable choices in the past, but in this moment, he's really defending Camp Half-Blood. He's defending Olympus. He is like sort of believing in the greater good in ways we haven't seen before. And it's sort of like in some ways two halves of his personality arguing. Like he even talks about how he spoke to, I think it was Talia, who said the thing about, holding grudges being his fatal flaw. And in this, he's like resisting the fatal flaw. He wants to trust people again. He wants to do something that's not just for his own benefit, but like actually put himself out there and risk himself to help other people, and then Hades is sort of like he represents that bad side of him, that impulse to just dig his heels in and go, no, I'm not going to help them, what did they ever do for me? And it's like kind of a cool scene, because even though obviously Hades is not literally him, he's sort of arguing with his past self.
Yeah, I think also it comes to the idea again of we've always talked about genetic personalities and how, the gods will pass on pretty much their personalities to their kids. And it's a fascinating subject to have about this, because it's like, how do you tell a god that they're wrong? Because, even though these gods are flawed, like, I tell you, like, the sky is green, you're going to fight me about it tooth and nail. And it's like, well, let's agree to disagree. And it's so fascinating. You have, like, this scene where it's pretty much, the way I'm imagining it is, of course, that Nico's, like, in the court, and all of a sudden, like, Hades is on, like, a throne that's, like, 30 feet up in the air. And he's, like, just hovering above and, like, imposing. And you have, like, Nico's trying to give his points, but Hades just doesn't want to listen to it. He's like, no, they're mean to me. They don't let me up in their fancy thing.
No, he's stubborn, and he has, like, these grudges that stretch back years and years. I guess there's something really kind of ironic about how gods, they like live forever, basically. So they're like, they not only are they immortal, but they have immortal grudges. They have grudges stretching back for as long as they've been alive, and you'd think you'd get some perspective there.
Well, I think there's also the idea of he's supposed to be a tragic character because his love, not demeanor, his literal wife that's sitting right next to him, Nico's mom blew up.
Right, yeah, read the room, my dude.
I'm sure she's, like, used to it, like, yeah, this is our life. Welcome to my show on TLC. Me living with a god. Right next to Breaking Amish.
Amish, Jesus.
I loved Breaking. We're not going to talk about it, but I love Breaking Amish.
My sister loved all those reality shows, all the Amish and, like, Hutterite TV shows on TLC. They're fascinating. Anyway, yeah, I really liked this scene. I found Hades to be, like, almost I don't know, almost unbelievably childlike in this, like, so stubborn and resistant to change. Like, seriously, like, you're a god?
I was getting some, like, Veruca Salt vibes.
It's not quite Veruca Salt, but I see what you're saying. Like this, like this selfish, like, well, I'll do what I want. I don't care. Like, it's very,
I want the whole world.
Yeah, very sulking. Like, he does what he wants. Very, yeah. Roald Dahl would definitely have him die in a dramatically ironic twist of fate where something happened with him. Maybe it would involve candy, who knows. Hold on, I want to find the thing that Hades says when he's arguing with Nico. Holding grudges is a fatal flaw. Bianca warned me about that, and she was right. For demigods, I am immortal, all-powerful. I would not help the other gods if they begged me, if Percy Jackson himself pleaded. You're just as much of an outcast as I am, Nico yelled. Stop being angry about it and do something helpful, for once. That's the only way they'll respect you. So this is kind of an interesting thing. I didn't think that the gods actually believed that they were infallible, right? Like, clearly history has proven that's not true.
Well, here's the thing again, like, I'll tell you the sky's green, but you're gonna tell me the sky's blue. No matter what you say, you're not gonna... It's like trying to convince a flat earther that the earth is round sometimes. Like, they're right in this way. Even when it comes to the facet of, fallibility, it's, how are you going to tell a god to say no? Or they're going to say they're wrong. It's like sometimes, like, my mom, sometimes we get into arguments about dumb things because she thinks she's right, and then I'll be right and she'll never apologize.
She's not a literal god, though. Yeah, it is funny, though, because there's...
I don't know, have you met my mother?
Oh, now that I think of it, I do think it's kind of funny that Rick Riordan would write a story that's intended for, like, young adults, and then here is an example of a parent insisting that they're always right just because they, like, believe that they are, which is that might be, like, an intentional thing that he's trying to relate to kids. Sometimes parents insist because of, like, a certain amount of, like, dynamic power they have that, oh, of course I'm right in this situation, but people are flawed. Everyone's flawed. Even gods, maybe especially gods.
Well, I think gods are the most broken because they've lived for so long.
Right, they pick up flaws like Pokemon. They're just getting flaws every once in a while, and if you live that long, you just you got a whole collection.
Wow, I got Narcissachu. This is awesome. After this, I'll get my Snorlax and my Lickitung and my Ghastly. I can start naming all the Pokemon.
Yeah. Can you name all that? No, don't do that, please.
B, don't underestimate my power. I will do it one of these days, but not today. It's like in Best of Show. I can name every nut. Macadamia nut, walnut, pistachio nut. I won't do
Oh,
it.
jeez.
But so we get to the next stream, and the next stream follows Ethan Nakamura. I'm seeing a trend here now of like we have a Nico scene, an Ethan scene.
There's some parallels for sure. They're sort of two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways.
Yes, and obviously what happens with Ethan is he's instructed to release the Draconus.
Yeah, which is a draken is apparently like a dragon, but older and worse and bigger.
Well, to be fair, every culture has a version of a dragon. Though I think Chinese dragons are really cool.
Do you know why? Because it's a universal feeling to look at a lizard and go, that's a little scary.
What if it had wings and breathed fire?
Yeah,
and gave us good
luck. Have you
luck?
heard that some people argue that like the reason that dragons are such a like ubiquitous thing that's like in all sorts of different types of mythology is that it's like an ancestral memory of like giant megafauna.
Oh my god, don't please stop. Obviously, Japan has the greatest dragon. Godzilla? No, it's not Godzilla, it's King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
Because Ghidra's actually... Oh no, technically Ghidra's an alien.
Yeah, Godzilla's not a dragon, he's a kaiju. I don't know.
So B, Godzilla's a dinosaur that got exposed to radioactive material and grew super big.
Why does he have arms, though? Why does he...
It depends on which version you see. Like, there's some of them he has bigger arms, some of them he has stubbier arms.
Some of them he looks more like a dinosaur. That's true. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to the action figures my cousin had when I was growing up. Yeah, he sort of looks like a dinosaur. Sometimes he doesn't, though. Sometimes he just sort of looks like a teddy bear. Like, he's sort of like a little outline.
Yes, no, the dragon for that would be King Ghidorah. He's got 3 heads, and there's a movie where he gets one of his heads bitten off and gets replaced with a mech suit.
That's pretty great.
It's great. Oh no, that's probably one of the worst Godzilla movies. I love that movie.
No, I'm sure. Anyway, this is kind of an interesting little aside about Ethan. Also, we get to see, what's his name?
Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Ridley Scott.
I feel like the definition of Prometheus is like, I think I'll cause problems on purpose, where he's just sort of like, there's something else going on with him. He has his own motivations. I don't feel like he's particularly loyal to Kronos. There's something going on there.
Man, no one's loyal these days. Everyone's cheating. Everyone's players.
All evil henchmen know how to do is eat hot chip and lie.
Or get run over by steamrollers.
Yeah.
So I like how like there's the wording like kind of like how Kronos is very sensitive right now and how Prometheus is like, maybe you should wait on this. You know, you are a little weak right now. You should wait until you get your full power. Like, I'm not weak. Release the Draken.
He gets pretty defensive. I think it's pretty funny that Prometheus obviously can tell that they're not quite prepared, but he's like, well, sure, sorry, didn't mean to question you. I phrased that wrong. So I don't know. The way that he keeps sort of like playing two sides of the fence where he's like sucking up to Kronos, but obviously doesn't seem to mean it. There's like something going on there. Then similarly with Ethan, like he also disagrees with what Kronos is saying, but Kronos is like can sense like this lack of loyalty in his hench people, so he's like, well, go listen to me, whatever, are you questioning me? And then Ethan's like, yeah, sure. So I get the sense that at the very least Ethan might change his mind or defect or something like that. There's something brewing where he isn't quite on board with this whole Kronos thing. He was, after all, the person who mentioned what's happening with Luke and that he's fighting from within inside Kronos. By the way, do you watch The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina?
Yeah, I saw it.
Did you see the most recent season? Because I keep thinking about the whole thing with Nick and spoiler alert, yeah, with like him and Lucifer like sharing a body and fighting each other. I feel like that's a very similar thing that's happening with Luke and Kronos right now.
You mean nice, kind people being indoctrinated by the literal devil? Yeah, that seems like a very common trope.
Yeah, and then they're like internally fighting in sort of a flesh vessel. Like it's a very reminiscent.
Yes, it's like the idea of someone trying to get out. Let me out.
Let me out.
Let me out.
Let me out.
Or is it like what is it, Eric Andre? Let me in. Let me in.
Yeah, no, that was at first that was Luke.
I kind of like this scene because we kind of know what's going to happen, and of course Percy wakes up and there's like things are going down. They're getting ready to be attacked.
Yeah, apparently the Draken is like so cacophonous and horrifying that it wakes Percy up, and then when he wakes up, he could hear it again miles away in real life. And I loved that as like a device. Like I could really picture that in an adaptation of like him waking up from the dream and hearing the same sound in reality. Like I thought that was a very cool crossing of realities. I don't think we've had that happen yet, where something that Percy had a dream of, he immediately then hears or perceives when he wakes up. I thought that was kind of a fun kind of device there.
If this was like a live action setting, Percy Jackson would wake up and all of a sudden the glass of water right next to him would do the Jurassic Park thing and like bounce.
Yeah, right. Honestly, I could really see that. But just like there's something just really like makes your stomach sink about like imagining that, right? Like if you woke up from a nightmare and then the same sound that was in your nightmare was in reality, like that's so freaking scary. I can't even imagine.
See, that's like if you ever had a dream where like you're falling and then you wake up and like you feel like you've just like crashed right into your bed. Have you ever had that feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that.
Or you have fallen, like reality has affected your dream. Because that's happened to me too.
What is this?
Where like
Inception?
I've been very cold in a dream and then I wake up and I realize that it's actually very cold in my room as well.
Yeah, there's like that one time where I was giving a presentation and I turned out that I was naked the entire time and everyone was laughing at me.
Oh no.
And then I went home and fell asleep and I had my clothes on for the presentation. Oh, wait a second. Oh no!
Anyway, I thought that was really cool. The Draken itself it's a monster that they fight. I don't know. I think it's more interesting as a device than it is as a monster.
Well, the Draken that I'm thinking of is the Rhinosaurus from Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, which is a movie that has a gigantic like lizard-like creature going through New York City.
I'm pretty sure I keep just imagining the basilisk from Harry Potter. That's just like my default.
I can imagine the basilisk. Do you imagine the phoenix popping up and being like, "Caw, caw, I'm gonna help you, Percy"?
Yeah, no, the Phoenix is not there to drop off a magical Godric Gryffindor sword or anything.
Here, kid, let's weaponize you.
Yeah, no, they just have art themselves. And I guess Mrs. O'Leary is helpful for the first half of this fight scene.
She's the goodest girl because she like fights. And it's so, I think the best way to put this is like sickum, but also it's so descriptive of like, she like knocks into like, I'm about to say basilisk, the Dracus.
Whatever,
oh, no.
same diff.
The dragon, whatever. I'm just going to call it dragon because I'm going to either call it Dracus, Dracone, or Draconic.
Yeah, a Dracon.
A Dracon.
I don't know.
Well, they talk about how Miss
It's
O'Leary,
a dragon, you guys. It's the same.
Well, Rick talks about how, like, you know, Miss O'Leary bites into it and, like, it sprays, like, venom everywhere and starts melting centaurs and stuff. Like, oh, man, this is hardcore.
Yeah, it's, I will read the description of the dragon because it is pretty, evocative, I'll say. Let me explain. There are dragons and then there are drakens. Drakens are several millennia older than dragons and much larger. They look like giant serpents. Most don't have wings. Most don't breathe fire, though some do. All are poisonous. All are immensely strong, with scales harder than titanium. Their eyes can paralyze you. Not the turn you to stone Medusa type paralysis, but the oh my gods, that big snake is going to eat me type paralysis, which is just as bad. We have... Okay, so it is like the basilisk, because can it petrify you? I feel like I'm just describing the basilisk. So this is, it's pretty similar to the basilisk. It's gigantic. It has big old teeth.
It's a big noodle.
Oh yeah, I didn't read that part, which it says, we have dragon fighting classes at camp, but there is no way to prepare yourself for a 200-foot-long serpent as thick as a school bus slithering down the side of a building, its yellow eyes like searchlights, and its mouth full of razor-sharp teeth big enough to chew elephants.
So what you're telling me is this is a danger noodle.
Yeah, big danger noodle. That's a tagliatelle grande.
Oh, no.
Deep cut.
It's so sticky. I hate it. But... Luckily, what ends up happening is, you know, Percy Jackson tries to fight the thing, but it turns out that Rachel drops another truth bomb where only a person of Aries can kill the beast.
Yes, only a child of Aries. That's very convenient because the entire Aries cabin is nowhere to be found. So, like, I guess it's a strategic choice on Kronos' part where they know that they don't have any children of Aries, so therefore they send a dragon that they cannot kill.
What is this, like in Macbeth? You know, when the forest comes to the castle is when you will die, Macbeth? That'll never happen. Oh no, they took the forest.
Yeah, basically, it's like they're making a prophecy not be fulfilled by like strictly structuring it that. I thought that was kind of like a fun like strategy thing, right?
Well,
Where
it's a good
they're playing
foreshadowing
into
thing.
is it prophecy? Like how would they know specifically that the monster can't be killed by someone who isn't child of Ares? Is that like a mythological? I don't remember what their justification is for why.
That is just Rachel, telling her futures.
Well, it's Rachel saying that, but also they say that
They've said that it's never been defeated, but this will be the first person to defeat it would be a child of Ares.
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel kind of says, and it gives the audience, like, oh, but they're not here yet. So then when you have the moment when they show up, you're like, yes, yay, they have to be here. Because that's just a storytelling element. If they weren't here, they'd have to be there the next chapter.
Right. Exactly. Then there'd be no way to kill it. It's like this weird recursive. We keep talking about prophecy a lot. It can get very confusing, but basically, if we're going to kill the Draken, then we need children of Ares, and therefore children of Ares are going to be there because we're going to kill the Draken, and that will happen. But also, we have to remember what Rachel also said, which we did not totally connect to the Draken thing until basically we find out, which is that a trick is going to happen.
It turns out that Ares has come in Clarice in her full armor. I mean, she kind of looks like Clarice. She's big, bulky, and wait a second, no, it's not her.
She has a helmet, and wait a second, are those blue eyes? Well, we don't really realize that that's not Clarice until it's way too late.
Yeah, no, it's very like a Mulan thing where you find out who Mulan is right at the end almost.
She like shakes her hair or whatever. Yeah, it's that kind of reveal. I feel like there's probably a different example where like a character dies and then did I just think of Halloween Town? I think I just thought of Halloween.
Yes, you just thought of Halloween Town. The part I was gonna talk about was kind of like the Lich King in Lord of the Rings and how no man will best it, but then the one rider of Rohan is a woman.
Yes, I am no man. Yeah. But that and Mulan are so like triumphant. Well, the example I was thinking of is when different Luke from Halloween Town. Listen, I promise I don't just watch this movie. He like dresses up as Marty, so then like Calabar's distracted, and then he hits like the cloaked figure that he thinks is Marty, and then he falls, and he's like, look over there, dum dum, or like some other very extremely Disney Channel original movie phrase, and they look over, and then Marty's like climbing into the jack-o'-lantern. Anyway, it's like that. It's just like that.
There's a lot of like things like that where it's, the idea of someone being who they're not supposed to be. And that's just like a trope that's gone back since like the beginning of time.
Anyway, I feel like maybe Halloween Town might be the movie that I've seen the most in my whole life. So that's probably why it's like my reference point for everything.
Oh boy, I can't wait for next year when I watch it again. Yay. I guess we watch it on Disney Plus now.
Did we watch it this year?
No, I didn't watch it with you. We watched the Grinch Halloween special. That's what we watched.
Yes, we did.
Oh, man.
Anyway,
but
differently surreal.
So what ends up happening is Selena gets injured by the basilisk with venom, and Clarice sees what's happening. The real Clarice, please stand up. And she like kicks its butt, even though I don't think it has a butt.
In like a minute, which makes me even madder about the thing that happened to Selena. But okay, let's talk about how they were both wrong for a second.
How are they wrong?
Here are my hot takes. First of all, Selena was wrong because she lied about who she was. She thought that if she brought the children of Ares that she would be helping, and she didn't believe that Clarice would ever let up because she's a stubborn jerk, to be totally honest. So she leads the children of Ares mistakenly believing that she's Clarice. Let's be real, they're kind of dumb for believing her, but whatever. That's beside the point. They follow her into certain death because, as we know, we need children of Ares to defeat this basilisk or whatever it is. We've discussed that that's the whole point. That's probably the whole reason Selena wanted to bring them. They need them, but she's not Clarice, so she can not kill it. It's the whole point. She should have known that.
You have to have like a story element like that where you have the martyr or you have to have the heroic sacrifice. Like that is just like 101 for a lot of stories. Like,
Right, I get that. I just think it was kind of selfish and dumb. But speaking of selfish and dumb,
we're not talking about selfish and dumb. We're talking.
Clarice is also selfish and dumb because that only happens because she's digging her heels in and doesn't want to go and help the people that have always been by her side and have always helped her. And she seemed to grow like a character and, actually understand that they're in this together and she doesn't have to be like a whiny baby about a chariot or whatever. But whatever, she doesn't help them until finally she has to come and help Selena, but it's too late, and she like totally takes out this Draken in like 3 seconds, and then it just makes me even more mad that the whole time it could have been her. She could have just dispensed of that thing real quick, no big deal, but she refused to because she was stubborn, and then look what happens to Selena.
Well, isn't that her fatal flaw, is that she's stubborn, and that's what costs Selena her life?
It is her fatal flaw. It makes me very mad, though.
Yes, and also there's a lot of story elements where you need to have things like this because you have to have the person enraged and they start swinging at the fences, and that's how they defeat the monster. Like, probably if she didn't die, they probably wouldn't have been able to defeat the Dracus. They probably wouldn't have been able to because that's the story element. Like, man, like, why do I have to use Star Wars for this? I don't even want to talk about The Last Jedi, but
your Star Wars is my
Halloween Town, but
Halloween
it's like,
Town.
But you have that moment too in The Last Jedi. Actually, I kind of like this part. I'll give this to Ryan Johnson for this. Is that when Kylo Ren and the gang are on the planet Crate, they have like their Death Star battering ram, and Luke comes in as like a force projection and fights Kylo Ren. And when Kylo Ren realizes that he's a force projection, he realizes that's all they're doing is to buy time. So when he disappears, that Rey becomes technically the last Jedi, or even though it's supposed to be Carrie Fisher, but unfortunately she passed. But you have to have things like that. You have to have the heroic sacrifice. You have to have like people sacrificing themselves for the greater good. In a lot of these like mythology stories, like you have to have Gandalf being hit by the Balrog and then resurrected as Gandalf the White, even though I think he should have stayed dead.
Oof, hot takes.
Well, no, I think because Gandalf is like a superhero, and like by killing Gandalf, you pretty much have to leave Frodo and the gang all by themselves without any hope, really. But then you have Gandalf the White come up, like, I'm gonna do everything. Isn't that right, Shadowfax? We're gonna yeet right into Mordor. Because most of what the Lord of the Rings series is about is pretty much about having faith, even during the faithless.
I guess. I'm not gonna...
Sorry, I go on tirades about this, but but yeah, even with like Selena's stuff, like, did she do the right thing? Possibly. Did she handle it the right way? I don't know.
I forgive Selena more so because obviously she pays sort of an ultimate price in this scenario, and also like wanted to do something to help. It wasn't smart, but it certainly came from the right place. Meanwhile, I'm pretty like on the side of I can't really forgive Clarice for the way she's acted in this book. She's been stubborn for chapters. I thought eventually she would change her mind. This is ridiculous. I'm kind of annoyed.
Well, that's the kind of the thing we've talked about constantly on the show, is like Clarice like resetting her character every book. It's a lot like TV shows, and how like sometimes the character moments you have are instantly reset within the beginning of the next season because new writers come on. But this is a little different because Rick Riordan wrote this all by himself. So I don't know, like Clarice, I guess that is her fatal flaw, but also, in the first book, she's supposed to be an adversary. In the second book, she's kind of like a hindrance. In the third book, she isn't quite there. In the fourth book, she's supposed to be tragic. And in the short story, she's supposed to have sympathy.
She has sympathy in the short story, which is one of the most recent times we've seen her. And
like,
yet...
It's like how Rick Riordan writes her probably is not the best because he keeps resetting her character.
Yeah, the consistency is a little confusing to me, honestly. Like, I feel like her character growth is sort of arbitrary, but which sort of happens a lot with characters. I feel like the only character growth that has been pretty consistent is Talia. Like, she's pretty level-headed in a way that she wasn't before, but Annabeth's character growth has been all over the place. I think to some extent, Nico's character growth has been all over the place. Sometimes he's a little bit like more foreboding, and prone to like being like tempted by doing something for his own selfish reasons. Like there's a lot of times where characters where you think like, oh my god, they're past this already, right? Didn't they already learn this lesson? And then they just do it anyway.
Yes, but the end result is that she still gets results and she kills the Draconess, and it's awesome.
That's true. Oh, she's great at it. That makes me madder though. Is that she so easily dispenses of the dragon. Like
I just think the ending of this chapter is so chilling because you have like they take off her helmet and they realize that half her face is just melted off, and there's like no reason for them to like give her nectar or ambrosia, which is like more scary if you think about it. Like in my mind, I'm thinking like the most horrific things possible, but to a kid, it's probably I don't even know. Like to like a young reader, like what do you think about in your mind? Do you think of like Harvey Dent?
Yeah, something like that. That's kind of what I imagined.
But it's also kind of ironic that Selena, they describe that her face gets melted off because she's a child of Aphrodite, and they've always described her being beautiful.
It's really heartbreaking.
Tragedy.
Yeah, it says, her features once beautiful were badly burned from poison. I could tell that no amount of nectar or ambrosia would save her. Something's about to happen. Rachel's words rang in my ears. A trick that ends in death. Now I knew what she meant, and I knew who had led the Ares cabin into battle. I looked down at the dying face of Selena Beauregard.
It's so sad.
Oof. What an ending to a chapter, guys. Bad. It's very bad. I feel like, oh my god, and Selena has grown so much, too, as a character, and she's like, her friendship with Clarice has been so important and meaningful, and I'm mad about it.
Here's the thing, though. It's like you have to be mad at her. You can be mad at a lot of things. You also have to be mad at, like, Kronos, the spy, whoever it is.
Right, all of the circumstances that conspired to make this happen, of course. Yeah, but I'm mad at Clarice because she's supposed to be on their side.
Well, I guess the good news is, B, is that Selena will be seeing Beckendorf very quickly.
Oh, no. Zach, why would you hurt me in this way?
Hopefully they have a good mortuary program. Maybe this is where Nico's powers will come into handy. Because we haven't really seen a body yet, have we? I guess we've seen, like, Zoe, but she's turned to stars. We haven't seen, like, what happens when you actually have...
Yeah, like just a straight up, just dead person sitting there, huh? Well, no, was that, who was the child of Ares who died? Or not, sorry, was it a child of Ares?
They talk about the funeral pyre and what they have, but they haven't talked about, like, what happens, like, right now. Like, where did they leave the body and stuff? Because they're not going to have time to, like, give it, like, a proper burial.
Yeah, it's pretty macabre, the whole situation. Oof, man.
Which is more, I think this is the moment where we realize Percy Jackson isn't your typical YA book. Because, you know, you have a comrade dying in your arms. Oh, man, it makes me sad.
I mean, is it not typical? I think there's, especially in the last book of a series like this, there often is, like, major character death where you have to, you know, reckon with an actual character permanently dying.
Well, yes, you have that in, like, Harry Potter. You have a lot of the characters start dying off in the Battle of Hogwarts. You can have that in, like, the Hunger Games. I'm not going to spoil the Actually, I could, but what's the point? Like Divergent, you have all these books where you have to have, it's almost like a quota, but I'm looking at this from like a fantasy perspective, or at least like when people come to like think of character deaths, you always think of George R. R. Martin, because the reason why he rationalizes all the deaths is, well, it's just realistic.
Right, the weight of that is very different, but again, that sort of is like a very integral part of this kind of story, right? It's like this coming of age, loss of innocence arc that we've seen time and time again in this kind of, like, God, my pretentious liberal arts is about to come out, but like the Bildungsroman, which is like the story of like the coming of age, where you need to have loss in order for the character to like see, I don't know, like the depths of human suffering, and to like go from this like place of innocence to this place of maybe not pessimism, but certainly like sort of the harsh reality of the world is brought to the main character in a way that it hasn't before.
This is where the teenager becomes the adult at this very moment.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a little bit with like the other deaths that we've seen so far, but yeah, like usually later in series like this is where we get the major character deaths for that exact reason, because it's like, oh, the stakes are being raised and the character is no longer a kid. And I guess it also like sends the message like no one is safe, you know, there isn't a magical halo around these characters that we care about. Like, they can die, there are consequences for what's happening here.
This is like in the story where you start killing off the C-level characters, then you'll start killing off the B-level characters, and then maybe you'll kill off an A-level character. Like, this is where I think Selena's more of like a B-level character because we've spent so much time with her. But then you kill off someone like Pollux or somebody, and like that's a C-level character. But here it's like, oof, this is hard, and I'm interested to see what happens next chapter because she isn't. They didn't say that she died in his arms, like as if like probably will she have like final words? Who knows? Or will this chapter just pick up? Yeah, so we buried Selena in Central Park.
Yeah, this is it's very dark. I'm sad that it has to be Selena. There's something I don't know. I've really like Selena's kind of grown on me too. Like she's really like come into her own as a character in like the last, like maybe the last book and this book too, where she's been kind of more fleshed out and her. I don't know. She's like grown a lot, and it's really. I do feel a little bit almost emotionally manipulated when you kind of know that an author did that so it would be more impactful when they killed a character. It's like, oh, it used to be much more of like a background character, and then we got like all invested in like, she like loved Beckendorf and all of her backstory stuff, and then she's friends with Clarice, and then this happens.
See, this seems like more tragedy upon tragedy. I mean, she lost her boyfriend. She pretty much like gets her face melted
off. And she
off.
sacrificed herself for her friend who was too stubborn to even ask for help.
Yikes in the yard, everybody. Yikes in the yard.
It's so sad. It's really sad. I don't know. This kind of hit me more than Beckendorf. I don't know why. I think it's because it came from such like a really like sad place, like the fact that Selena kind of maybe on some level knew she was just going into a suicide mission, but she felt like it was the right thing to do, that maybe she would get Clarice to help.
Well, I think the difference though was that when it comes to like Beckendorf, he was like vaporized instantaneously, whereas you see Selena and they talk about how like her face is disfigured and pretty much she's dying slowly, which is a far worse death than just being incinerated instantaneously.
Yeah, there's been most of the deaths we've seen have been sort of like more magical or like
quick deaths.
Yeah, exactly, or like it happens off screen, but this is like gruesome.
Yes. Oh man. So maybe on a lighter note, B, what is the name of the next chapter?
The name of the next chapter is I Sit on the Hot Seat. What the frick-frack does that mean?
Oh no, do you know what a hot seat is, B?
I mean, like, I know the metaphorical, like, hot seat, like, oh, you're sitting in a position of tension, I guess. Like, being interrogated?
Or being on, like, a talk show, like Jerry or something. Who knows? Or maybe he's actually on like a hot seat. Maybe he accidentally sat on his hot plate.
I can never tell what the chapter's referring to. Like if it's like a broader, more like referring to like the battle or the prophecy, or if it's just like an interpersonal thing. So it could literally just be Percy having to like talk to Annabeth and Rachel and deal with that whole awkward situation. Or if it's like a literal thing where something is going to be on fire. Like I never know with you, Rick Riordan, so who's to say?
Or it could be like just a gigantic flaming throne that he has to sit on.
Yeah, literally a flaming throne. Anything from a flaming throne to having to talk to his girlfriend, the whole gamut is there.
To be fair, I'd rather sit on the flaming throne than talk to my girlfriend when they're mad.
Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of the definition of these books in a lot of ways, is like Percy being like, well, rather go fight a giant monster than have to talk to you people. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody. See you on therapy. So, B, do you want to read some listener emails?
I do. We got a few this week. First one is from Gideon, who says, hey, I hope y'all are doing great. So an answer to an old question is that the reason that Percy isn't homeschooled online is because the technology would attract monsters. Oh, right. And I made some new fan art of Rachel Elizabeth Dare. Anyway, I hope y'all have a good day and stay young?
I think stay... Ooh, wow.
I thought that said stay strong for a second. By the way, I gave myself like 10 minutes to make this, so I did my best with the time I had. Also, a new draw style I tried.
It looks good. I love it.
I didn't think... Yeah, you sent me to this earlier this week. Thank you so much for the fan art. I love fan art. I didn't think about the technology thing at all when we were discussing this. I guess that's true, right? That's why they don't have cell phones. It like makes a beacon for monsters.
Well, if I remember correctly, what he's kind of referring to here is kind of, we always joked about why doesn't Percy Jackson get homeschooled?
Right, yes. I think pretty recently we asked I don't know. Now I can't remember. But yeah, we did talk about why they kept sending him to school.
Yeah, he kept blowing up schools. If I remember correctly, I think one of the jokes we made is why don't they just go to Camp Half-Blood and just get, online schooled?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that be more beneficiary than just, like, going to school and being attacked by monsters? But I guess I can see why.
And then it's like the inevitable. Yeah. And I guess the technology thing, have we learned how that works exactly? Because I know cell phones make like a beacon for monsters, but in this case, they are using cell phones because it doesn't kind of matter, like in for a penny, in for a pound. But like,
But even if he goes to school, what happens when like, okay, class, we're gonna go to the computer lab today? Percy's like, I can't do that. Everything's pen and paper.
That's true.
So no matter what you do,
yeah. Does the internet work the same as cell phones in that regard? I don't remember.
I'm gonna take a guess and say yes. What is it like? The monster like gets into a chat room with Percy Jackson. Hey, ASL. No, it's never gonna be like that at all.
Yeah, he gets an Uber, but then he like opens the car door and it's a monster driving the car.
I'd still give it 5 stars if it got me to the place I needed to go. I never judge someone by their appearance.
I guess cell phones and the internet aren't all that different in a lot of ways.
Just imagine a modern demigod now. Oh man, they'd be so miserable they couldn't get on the internet at all.
No, yeah, exactly. It's like impossible to not be connected to anything. There's like an internet of things. Like your lamp is connected to the internet.
Oh no, is my lamp connected to an internet? Lamp, are you connected to an internet? Yes. Oh no!
A lot of people's lamps are connected to the internet, or like their lighting, their home security, their washing machine, their dishwasher, like literally like everything's connected to the internet now.
So what you're telling me is that when the apocalypse happens, nothing's gonna work. Got it.
Probably, yeah. That's kind of the world we're headed towards.
Thank you so much for that lovely email. I have an email B, and this is from Anna that says hello. Hi, Zack and B. I just wanted to say thank you so much for making such a fun and interesting podcast. I'm 20 currently, but I've been reading the PGO series and its many spin-offs since I was in 3rd grade, and it's really cool to be able to experience the series through the eyes of you guys. I really identify with Zack as they gain a different perspective on a childhood favorite, and seeing the books through the eyes of a new reader, like B, makes it all the more magical. I actually binge listened to the series in 2 weeks in a day. I listened on double speed, and there's a ton of little things you guys said that I wanted to respond to, but most of them were so long, you probably don't remember talking about most of those things, or at least I wouldn't. Overall, I really enjoy you guys, except when Zack does his teenage boy voice, which actually sets off my fight or flight response for some weird reason. Okay, I've said this before. I think I've stopped doing that. I think I've made that oath, right?
Oh, you stopped that a while ago. You haven't really done it much.
I tried doing it last night when we got this email. I don't think I can do it anymore. I think that part of me is lost. I'll never get it back.
Yeah.
To continue, and I really appreciate how well you guys take constructive criticism, even when it's unwarranted or has a harsh tone. I don't want to come off as condescending to younger listeners, of which I know you guys have many, but I want to commend y'all for having such patience in responding to them. I know I would have a hard time with that. I think it's hard sometimes to remember that it's what it's like to be a tween or an early teen when every pair of people interacting is automatically a ship, or everyone has to like the same movies as you, and you have to ask the same questions that you've been asked 10 times just to be sure. I really think rereading these books with you guys really helps me remember what it's like to be this age and have a little more patience for both the characters and real-life kids, haha. Another note, I just wanted to say that I feel very strongly that the best way to read this series for the first time is in publication order. Though I understand that this may not be feasible because I would probably mean altering which series that you would go between. Anyways, sorry if this email is long, but I just wanted to say I really appreciate everything you guys do, and I look forward to listening every week. From Anna.
Wow, what a great email. Thank you so much. I'm glad you appreciate our show. We try our very best to do okay. Yeah, I'm trying to
we try to be entertaining.
Yeah. I'm going through the bullet point of all the things mentioned in your email. It was very, very thoughtful. And
I think when it comes to criticism, I think for us, criticism's a part of life, and it's just figuring out a way to be polite without being like the guy talking about Parasite and why Joker should have won. What? Why should it have won?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, definitely. I very much appreciate the polite feedback we get, even if it is criticizing us, as long as people are coming at it from a well-meaning place. I appreciate anything that people have to say about our show. It means they're listening and they care, what we're talking about, which is cool.
I think like one of the misconceptions, especially when it comes to criticism, like when we respond to something, is that the problem though is when you have an argument, usually it's like someone responds, you have a rebuttal, then someone responds. The problem though is when you read an email, then you respond to it and there isn't like the rebuttal back. I think that's where people kind of think things are harsh, but we try to fill in the gap in the best, most polite way possible because what's the point of being a Richard? Be cool, guys. Just be cool. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, thank you for your email. That was
Thank
very
you
sweet.
so much.
Another email from Sophia who says, Dear Zack and B, this is Sophia from Nebraska again, the place no one knows about. Please say that what you know about it, what I know about Nebraska. I don't think I know anything about Nebraska.
They got corn?
Yeah, corn.
Brandon Sanderson's from Nebraska?
Midwest, right?
It's Midwest.
Nebraska the Midwest. Yeah, can't say I know anything else.
Of Nebraska?
Oof. I could guess where Nebraska is. Is it near Missouri?
B, you're kind of close on that, actually. You put a gun to my head and say, where's Nebraska? I'd be like, I don't know. I think it's got corn. Clack.
Again, that's all I know, though. Camp and corn. That's it. That's all I know. Sorry. That doesn't speak to the greatness or the not greatness
the majesty of Nebraska.
It's the majesty of Nebraska. No, it merely speaks to how dumb I am.
Oh, well, but is there any more to the email, B?
No, I'm joking. Yeah, imagine just like, I'm from Nebraska. Tell me about it.
Please do tell us about Nebraska.
And I'm listening to your latest episode while writing this email. I'm really jealous of Zach right now because we are about to get thunder snow.
Thunder snow? That sounds so awesome.
Yeah, it's like a thunderstorm with snow. I think we've had that before. It's scary. Anyway, has no one noticed how at the end of the second book, Blackjack is a girl and the rest of the series, he's a boy? Your podcast is the one I wait to listen to all week. I've thought about one really random thing because I also like Thomas Sanders, which is Sanders' side, you guys. Which Sanders' side you guys would be? B would definitely be Virgil, and Logan. Zach would be Roman and Patton. This was really off-topic email, so anyway, love your podcast. Keep staying mortal. Sophia, P.S. How do you like the memes? And then you sent what I only describe as a very funny meme of Tangled with Flynn Rider and Rapunzel, where Rapunzel looks very excited, and Flynn does not. And above Rapunzel, it says normal people, and then people who've read the books watching the Percy Jackson movies. So it's, yeah, that's about right. Though I think people who have not read the books have also found that movie to be bad and dumb. So
as a movie person, it's bad and dumb, but once I watch the book, it's awful.
Yeah, so you don't need to read the books to have a problem with it. It's also not great.
No, it's not. But to answer, I guess, this controversy between is Blackjack a boy or a girl, I'm sure Rick Riordan forgot and then started writing it like he had an idea.
Yeah, I didn't remember. Then again, he did write the series, so maybe you'd think he'd remember, but he did not. He was focused on other things like prophecies and plot lines and killing off characters, and he forgot the sex of his flying Pegasus, but I don't know.
My response is a wizard did it.
Maybe. I don't know. Or Blackjack is trans.
That's also a possibility, too.
It's a possibility. I don't know. It just happened off screen. They were just like, still go by Blackjack, but I use he, him now.
That's also a possibility.
That's fun. A trans icon, Blackjack. The Pegasus.
That sounds like Blackjack also sounds like an awesome name.
Yeah, that's a great name.
But thank you so much, Sophia, for that. I love all the memes. The memes are good. Memes are always life. I actually... Fun fact, B, before I go to bed, I look at memes. I have a meme app.
Just to lull yourself into a gentle sleep.
Well, I like to laugh and then go to sleep.
That's pretty good.
That's how one should spend the rest of their life. If I drop dead tomorrow, at least I laughed at night.
Yeah, I often fall asleep watching esoteric food videos on YouTube.
It's either that or I listen to movie commentaries.
That's good too. Yeah, or I listen to podcasts. A lot of podcasts.
See, I can't listen to podcasts because then my producer brain starts to go on.
It depends. Certain ones I get annoyed by the noise and I turn it off. It depends.
I think my favorite one, which is the worst, was Arnold Schwarzenegger did one for Total Recall, and he just describes things in the movie. He doesn't talk about the movie. So I go into this bar, and I'm going to fight the bad guys. It's supposed to be right to sleep because it's so great and funny.
Oh yeah, you also have said that you've fallen asleep to horror movies before, so we exist in different realms sometimes, you and I, Zach.
The 2 horror movies that put me right to sleep are Evil Dead 2 and The Thing by John Carpenter.
Can't understand living that kind of life, but good for you. Did we get any other emails?
We did not get any other emails, and we didn't get any Apple Podcast reviews, but that's okay.
Oh, no, I have Apple Podcast. All right, so I guess you guys have a mission to give us an Apple Podcast review for next week.
Ooh, yes, because we love reading those. So, B, where can they find you on the social medias?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to tweet at the show, you can tweet at us at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphhalfblood@gmail.com. We have a Patreon/radiocamphhalfblood. We also have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so check those out. And B, guess what? Guess what's awesome?
What's awesome?
You like hearing my sexy voice? You can listen to my new podcast. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes, your new show. Very exciting. I know you showed me that you're climbing the charts there with your new podcast already.
So the podcast I started doing with my good friend Caitlin for a website called Something Ghoulish is called Of Gods and Monsters, where we talk about classic monster movies from a bygone time. We actually got up to number 8 in film history, and that's kind of crazy to me because I'm right next to Joe Dante, one of my personal heroes. Like, I'm on the same page. Like, what?
That's really cool.
Oh, man. I don't even know how that happened.
When you said you're on the same page as Joe for a split second, I thought you meant Rogan, and I was very concerned. But I'm glad you meant a different Joe.
I mean Joe Dante. The person that directed Gremlins, The Howling.
Wow.
And many, many other movies. Check that podcast out. We have 3 episodes out right now. We release on Mondays, same as with Radio Camp Half-Blood. Well, guys, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal. See ya!
Bye, guys.